Hello everyone, my name is Hannah and welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be filming my beginner's guide to Sarah J. Maas books. So if you don't already know, I am a massive, no pun intended, Sarah J. Maas fan. I hate that I just made that joke. You know what, we're rolling with it, that's my humor, so come on, that was funny. I'm a big Sarah J. Maas fan. She is my favorite author. I have read every book that she's written and I have loved all of them. I've got my hat on that has a quote from the Throne of Glass series. I've got my Night Court Sigil t-shirt on. I have tattoos that are quotes from her book or something related to her books. I'm just a huge fan, and I have gotten quite a few questions about where to start with Sarah J. Maas books, what order to read certain series in, and so I hope to answer all of those questions and more. So the first thing you would want to know is that she has 3 series out and 1 standalone. One of her series only has 1 book out so far, and then 1 series is complete. 1 series is mostly complete, but it has a spin-off series that is kind of attached to it. But we're going to talk about all of those series, what they're about, and where to start, what order to read them in, all that good stuff. So the first series I'm going to talk about is the Throne of Glass series. It is quite a long series. There are 8 total books, and they pretty much get progressively bigger as the series goes on. But this is also Sarah J. Maas's first book she's ever written. She started writing Throne of Glass when she was like 16 and has just kept on with it. She went to Hamilton College for creative writing and has then worked on it, had it edited, and so it's kind of her baby. So the first book in the series, which again we'll talk about because of the order, but Throne of Glass is the first book. This is the series I'm talking about. This is basically about an assassin who was basically born and raised in an assassin's guild, and so she has all of these like kick-ass abilities. And in this book, she goes to the castle, like the castle of her kingdom or whatever, and has to kind of fight in this championship in this castle to become the king's champion and kind of work for him and be his own personal assassin. And there's some other things going on. There's some like mysterious things going on that she's also trying to figure out. And I don't want to say any more than that because it could be, you know, the series is just, it's so much more than that little synopsis, but obviously as the series goes on, more things get revealed. So I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, the series is so much more than just that synopsis. But it is incredible. It definitely starts out more YA, and then again, as the series goes on and as the main character gets older, it becomes more adult. There's more mature content in the later books. So if you are interested in this series, just go in with that in mind, that it starts out more YA, goes sort of to new adult, to adult, that kind of thing. So now let's talk about the order to read them in. The first book that I want to talk about that you should start with is The Assassin's Blade. This is the novella bind-up book. So there's 5 different novellas in this book, and basically it's like the prequel to the series. It kind of tells you a little bit about the main character Selena and her life and what she's going through and kind of the events that lead up to the first book that put her in that position to try to become the king's champion. And I've seen people say that like you don't need to read this book first, you can wait until like right before one of the later books to read it because some characters come back, but I personally think that you should read this first. This is the first book in the series in my opinion. It reads like a novel. The novellas don't feel like segmented. I mean, they are segmented, but they feel like they flow as one whole story. And there's so much that is covered in this book and so many little like Easter egg things that come up in the main series that it's just so much better if you read this first, so that when those things get brought up in the books, like you know where they come from and you know what she means and you know what's going on. Yeah, I just think you should definitely read this first before diving into the rest of the series. So if you see people say that you can read it, you know, right before Empire of Storms or whatever, I think those people are wrong. You should read this first, okay? First book of this series. Then comes Throne of Glass, then Crown of Midnight, then Heir of Fire, then Queen of Shadows, then Empire of Storms, and then Tower of Dawn. I wanted to talk about these two at the same time because they're like parallel stories. The like main group of characters that we follow get split up, and so the events that happen in this book are at the same time as the events that happen in this book. They're just split up. So you follow different characters' point of views and you're kind of following them as the same events happen. I think that you should read Empire of Storms first because that's what was published first, and then you should read Tower of Dawn. But I don't know that if you read Tower of Dawn first, then Empire of Storms, if there's like anything that would spoil what happens in Empire of Storms. I don't think so, but I still think you should read Empire of Storms first and then read Tower of Dawn because, again, they're like parallel timelines or parallel events happening, like they're happening at the same time. And I know that there is a blog post that somebody had where you can read like this chapter to this chapter of this book and then pick up this chapter to this chapter of this book so that you're reading it at like the events that happen at the same time, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm not making sense here. But yeah, I think Empire of Storms first, then Tower of Dawn. And then the finale, which is Kingdom of Ash. So you'll notice that the books gradually get bigger the farther into the series you get. I know that they changed like the paper width between Queen of Shadows and Empire of Storms. So even though Queen of Shadows looks bigger, Empire of Storms is actually longer. So that is that series. The next series I'm going to talk about is the Acotar series, which I love all of Sarah J. Maas's books, but the Acotar series just holds a special place in my heart. I think out of all of her series, I think I would say that the Throne of Glass series is my favorite. Just like the character development and the storyline, I think is just incredible, that the things that she comes up with. But my favorite book is in the Acotar series. So this is the Acotar series that I'll be talking about next. The first book is A Court of Thorns and Roses. That's what Acotar means, A Court of Thorns and Roses. So if you hear me calling it Acotar, Akamath, it's just like an anagram for, not an anagram, an abbreviation? No, what is it called? Anyways, it's just the first letter of all of the words in the title. So if you hear me referring it to as that, that's what it means. But A Court of Thorns and Roses follows Feyre, who is trying to take care of her family. They're very, very poor. They used to be really rich, and their father lost all of their money, and so now they kind of have to fight for their food. Feyre has to go hunting, and when she's in the wood hunting one day, she sees this enormous wolf that she thinks could possibly be a fairy, and she doesn't know what to do about it. She's like, if I kill it, or if I don't kill it, it could come after me. But either way, she just decides that it's best to just kill that giant wolf, because if it's just a giant wolf, then she has meat and fur, or like the pelt to sell, or if it is a fairy, then she's going to kill it before it can kill her. Someone comes to claim the debt for killing that wolf, which happened to be a fairy, and they're going to take Feyre into the fairylands, which is supposed to be really, really dangerous for humans, and she's going to live on this estate with this fairy who came to claim the debt. So it's kind of a Beauty and the Beast retelling, at least in this book. In the other books, it kind of follows its own thing, but that's pretty much where the story kicks off. Yeah, it's just incredible. I love everything about these books. So the first book in that series is A Court of Thorns and Roses. Then you have my favorite book, A Court of Mist and Fury. So this one's a bit longer, but it's my favorite book. It's a lot of people's favorite book, but A Court of Mist and Fury is next. And then the finale of this series is A Court of Wings and Ruin. So this is the end of like Feyre's story arc pretty much. But then there's also the little novella that comes after it, which is A Court of Frost and Starlight. I saw somebody describe this book as basically like a really long epilogue because it's just over 200 pages. But that's exactly how I would describe it. This is just kind of a really long epilogue. And it still follows Feyre, but it also jumps around to different points of view, which in the first 3 books, it just follows Feyre's point of view. It very, very rarely follows somebody else's point of view. So it's first person in Feyre's point of view, and then in this book it jumps to different perspectives. And this book is supposed to basically bridge the gap to the spin-off series, which is still set in the same world, following other characters that we meet in this series. I personally loved this book. A lot of people thought that it was pointless and that there wasn't a plot and that it didn't have like a purpose really, but I liked being with these characters, and like I like that it's described as a really long epilogue because that's how I see it. But I don't think that you have to read this book if you're not interested in it in order to move on to the spin-off series, but I would still definitely recommend it because I love these characters. But you don't have to read it. Nothing like super important happens in this book that you need to know before going into the next book in the series. And so that spin-off series following characters that we meet in the original books is Court of Silver Flames. So it's still set in the same world, set in the same like time period. It's just following different characters. And there, I think, will be at least 2 more books in this like spin-off trilogy. They're just, each book is going to follow a different set of characters. Hey everyone, Editing Hannah here. I just wanted to say that A Court of Silver Flames follows the events that happen in the original trilogy, so that does need to be read after you read the original trilogy. You can't just like pick up A Court of Silver Flames because it's a new series. It's a spin-off series and it follows the events that happen in those first 3 books, 3.5 if you count the novella, and it's really important that you read those first because otherwise pretty much nothing will make sense. So make sure you read those first. A Court of Silver Flames, although it is the beginning of a new spin-off series, it's still kind of attached like a caboose onto the end of that train. All right, back to the video. And then I would say that these books are more new adult to adult content. They definitely have more mature content. Acotar is more new adult, but then the books start to get steamier as the series goes on. And then A Court of Silver Flames, I would definitely categorize as adult. It's got some very mature content in it. The next series I'm going to talk about is the Crescent City series, and it only has 1 book out so far, and that is House of Earth and Blood. This book follows Bryce Quinlan, who is kind of a party girl in this city, and she kind of, you know, lives life without a care in the world, and then something tragic happens, and she is trying to basically solve this mystery and work to find this demon that's been let loose in the city who's like killing people. So it's got that like murder mystery element, but also like a demon hunting aspect to it that I wasn't expecting, that I really liked in this book. But yeah, I would also categorize this book or this series as adult because again, it's got mature content in it. But so far, there's only this book out in this series. I know the next one is set on Goodreads to come out in November of 2021, but we haven't really heard anything about that, so that could be pushed back. But yeah, this series just has the 1 book so far, so. And then Sarah J. Maas's standalone book is the Catwoman Soul Stealer book. This was in the DC Icons, it's not a series, it's like a series of standalones that she was chosen as an author for. There are other superheroes that this follows written by other authors. There's a Wonder Woman book, a Superman book, and a Batman book, but Sarah has only wrote this book. And it's just a standalone following Catwoman. It kind of follows Catwoman like in her early years when she's a teenager. So this one would be more of a young adult category, I suppose. So yeah, if you don't know anything about Catwoman, basically it's this girl, Selena Kyle, who in this book, she kind of escapes from the slums and goes to this like assassin's training kind of thing. I don't know that it's assassins, but definitely thief training, I suppose. She gets all these skills and then she comes back to Gotham City and it's ripe for the taking. It also has a little bit of a romance element to it, like all of Sarah J. Maas's books have. Yeah, if you're looking for reading what Sarah J. Maas's writing is like, but just like getting the whole story in one single book, this is a good one. It's the only one that she's written that's a standalone. But yeah, like I said, I would categorize this as young adult, probably. So those are all of the books that Sarah J. Maas has written so far, or that have been published so far. But one of the questions that I get most of the time is like, what series to start with? Where should you start? And I think you should start with either the Throne of Glass series or the Acotar series. I wouldn't dive in with House of Earth and Blood or with Catwoman unless you're only looking for like the one book story. Then obviously Catwoman's the good one to go to. But yeah, I would start with the Throne of Glass series because the story is complete. All the books are out. You can binge it if you want to, and it kind of eases you into it, and you still get all of the things that I love about Sarah J. Maas's writing in these books. So the first few books are shorter. They're like around 400 pages, and then they gradually start to get bigger, so they kind of ease you into the big books. And I don't know, the story is just so well done and it builds on itself so much that like by the end of the series it feels like so much more than when the book started. So it like I said, it eases you into it. So I would recommend starting with Throne of Glass first. But if you want to see what all of the hype is about with the Acotar series, this is also a good one to start with, just because the main series is finished, and then the spin-off series, it still has books coming out, so you still have something to look forward to. But yeah, one of those two is what I would start with if I were you, if I was just getting into reading Sarah J. Maas. I personally started with the Throne of Glass series, and then I read the Acotar series, and now I'm just reading all of her books. So yeah, that is my beginner's guide to Sarah J. Maas. If you are a Sarah J. Maas fan, or if you have any other questions, you can comment or message me on Instagram if you want to talk about Sarah J. Maas. Like I said, she's my favorite author, so I love talking about her and her books. But if you liked this video, you can let me know by liking and subscribing down below or leaving a comment. I really, really appreciate that, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!